What if the people shaping our biggest historical moments weren't who we thought they were at all? Follow me down the rabbit hole about crisis actors. Hello, friends, and welcome back to the rabbit hole. I'm your host, Danny, and today we are talking about crisis actors. When we think of crisis actors, we think of CIA propaganda and psyops, but crisis actors are documented far back in U.S. history before the CIA was even established. Sometimes they aren't who we think they are. Today, we're pulling back the curtain and stepping through the smokescreen to find not just what a crisis actor is, but who they really are and what they are used for. Thank you, Jalen, Nick, and Gage for requesting this episode. And of course, thank you to Wise Wolf Gold for sponsoring my podcast. Guys, if you want gold and silver delivered straight to your front door for as little as $50 a month, go to rabbithole.gold right now. The first story I want to get into is about Harold Pitney Brown, the first known crisis actor used for the U.S. government. Harold Pitney Brown, an inspiring figure in the world of electrical innovation, was born on September 16th, 1857 in Janesville, Wisconsin, to the remarkable General Theodore F. Brown and Frances Brown. General Brown, a devoted Civil War hero, earned the honorary title of Brigadier General for his brave actions during the Battle of Kennesaw Mountain. After graduating from Chicago High School in 1876, Harold jumped into a career at the Western Electric Manufacturing Company, where he played a vital role in developing groundbreaking electrical devices, including Edison's electric pen duplicating machine. Brown then moved on to the Brush Electrical Company from 1879 to 1884, where he showcased his talents by designing and installing innovative arc lighting systems. Between 1884 and 1887, he launched his own venture, the Brown Electric Company, focusing on the development of advanced arc lighting equipment. Harold Pitney Brown's journey is a remarkable testament of ingenuity and determination. In 1887, Brown moved to New York and worked as a consultant for the New York and Westchester Railroad and Edison General Electric, consulting on the development of the electric chair with Governor David B. Hill and the state of New York. He also provided consulting services to the city of Newark, Dayton, Ohio, the Buffalo Electric Rail Line, and the Louisville Electric Rail Line. The late 1880s were an exciting time, full of potential as America began to introduce electric light. At the heart of this transformation was Thomas Alva Edison, also known at the time as the Wizard of Menlo Park, who advocated for his direct current system. The competition intensified as George Westinghouse introduced his efficient alternating current, or AC, system. The War of the Currents was an intense conflict that highlighted not only technical skill, but also aggressive tactics as Edison struggled to establish his dominance in this new era of electricity. Edison knew he couldn't simply dismiss AC as inferior, he had to make it terrifying. He had to scare people. So he needed a voice that sounded unbiased, a seemingly neutral expert whose warnings would resonate with the public and, even more importantly, with legislators. That voice belonged to Harold Pitney Brown. Beginning in 1888, Brown launched a major public campaign against AC, portraying its high voltages as a lethal threat lurking in every wire. Brown positioned himself as a public safety expert, genuinely concerned about Westinghouse's technology. This appearance of impartiality was the key to Edison's strategy. Brown was a collaborator in one of Edison's sneakiest schemes. Evidence confirms that Brown was operating in direct collusion with the Edison Electric Light Company. As Brown visited various cities to raise awareness of the dangers of AC, he was secretly supplied by his supposed rival. Edison provided Brown with the necessary space and gear at his West Orange facility. Edison's company treasurer, Francis S. Hastings, maintained continuous contact with Brown, covering the costs of his publications and gruesome demonstrations. Edison himself vouched for Brown, recommending him as a definitive expert on the dangers of AC to city governments considering the adoption of an electrical system. The peak of this fearmongering involved gruesome public demonstrations. Brown would electrocute stray dogs, calves, and even horses using AC. Ironically, AC supplied by the very Edison company that advocated for DC power. These spectacles were a deliberate psychological tool designed to forge an unforgettable link in the public's mind. Alternating current equals instant death. The ultimate act of collateral damage in this commercial war was the creation of the electric chair. Brown was instrumental in the New York State Commission that recommended electrocution as the new method of capital punishment. Edison, while publicly opposing capital punishment, secretly assisted Brown in ensuring that Westinghouse's alternating current powered this new device. The goal was chilling and pretty straightforward: to create the new word electrocution and forever associate his competitor's technology with state sanctioned killing. Through the seemingly independent expert Harold P. Brown, Edison engineered a successful, albeit morally reprehensible, PR campaign to weaponize fear for commercial gain against George Westinghouse. Amidst the war of the currents, Edison's empire was also setting its sights on another expanding field: moving pictures. In 1888, the true pioneer of single lens motion picture film was not Edison, but the brilliant French inventor Louis Le Prince. Le Prince had created a revolutionary single lens camera and projector, capturing the world's first successful moving images years before Edison's kinetoscope was functional. He created a motion picture called The Round Hay Garden Scene, and it was released on October 14th, 1888. Le Prince's mother was featured in this scene. In 1890, Le Prince was ready to introduce his invention to the American market, which would have put him ahead of Edison in the race to control the future of filmmaking. However, on September 16th, 1890, just before his planned transatlantic trip and his highly anticipated U.S. presentation, Le Prince boarded a train in Dijon after visiting his brother and was never seen again. Le Prince and his luggage vanished without a trace. His body was never found. No ransom note was ever issued. Not a single passenger reported seeing him on the train, nor was his luggage or the material for his New York presentation ever recovered. He was legally declared dead in 1897. The incident was a mystery that instantly cleared the path for Edison's moving picture technology to dominate the emerging American film industry. Le Prince's family, notably his wife, Lizzie, who was most publicly outspoken, claimed that Edison had something to do with his disappearance, claiming her husband was kidnapped and murdered for the credit of the first motion picture. Le Prince's oldest son, Adolphe, took a year off from studying at Columbia University to travel the world collecting evidence so he could testify for the defense, specifically for the American Mutoscope Company, against Edison, who claimed to be the inventor of the motion picture camera, not Le Prince. Adolphe proved his father's credibility by producing his grandmother's death certificate, which stated that she died on October 24th, 1888, 10 days after the Round Hay Garden Scene film was created. This meant that the film and the camera Le Prince invented to shoot it with existed before her death. Edison's kinetoscope wasn't officially invented until 1891. In 1901, the case of Equity 6982, Thomas A. Edison versus American Mutoscope Company, the court declared Thomas A. Edison the original, first, and sole inventor or discoverer of cinematography. Just a year later, the decision was overturned on appeal, which ruled that Edison was not the sole inventor. Although the court did not specifically declare Louis Le Prince the inventor, it did annul Edison's claim to be the sole inventor. Just 3 years later, Adolphe was killed tragically under suspicious circumstances as his body was found battered during a duck shoot on Fire Island, New York. He was only 29 years old at the time. Adolphe Le Prince was found dead near his family's cottage where his family was staying. The death was ruled suicide by gunshot to the forehead with his duck hunting rifle. So, I looked up a duck hunting rifle that would be commonly used in New York in the year 1905. And I mean, technically, I guess it's possible to kill yourself that way, but it's very, very unlikely. However, Lizzie Le Prince was sure that her son's death was a murder and that Thomas Edison was responsible. She claimed that Adolphe was murdered because he knew too much about Edison's schemes after being a key witness in the patent lawsuits. And I can't imagine what it would be like to be Lizzie Le Prince, thinking that her son and her husband were both killed by Thomas Edison. Like, that would be heartbreaking. That story helps us understand how people can be used as actors to manipulate the public, especially when it comes to regulations and policy. Someone as deviant as Thomas Edison got away with a lot of shady stuff back then when people were really vulnerable and unsuspecting. The consequences of his actions have never been fully condemned by anyone. To this day, our schools still teach that he was the inventor of the light bulb, the electric utility system, recorded sound, motion pictures, research and development labs, and the alkaline family of storage batteries. In reality, our history books reflect what the government wants us to believe. Don't even get me started on McGraw Hill and how Robert Maxwell was literally controlling the narrative of all of our history in the most recent years. Our next rabbit hole is about the CIA because it is essential to understand the potential for deception, such as hiring crisis actors in the United States, and how orchestrated operations can be carried out on a large scale without anyone ever knowing, not even those in our own government. This is the family jewels. So, the family jewels is a set of CIA records detailing illegal, inappropriate, and otherwise sensitive activities conducted by the Central Intelligence Agency from 1959 to 1973. We also have to keep in mind that this is documented deception dating back 70 years. So, just imagine how technology has advanced and what more could be possible now. What do we not know after 1973? This document is composed of 702 pages of responses from senior CIA personnel to Director James R. Schlesinger's 1973 directive. The directive specifically required officers to report any past or present activity that, quote unquote, might be inconsistent with the agency's character. The full redacted document was officially released in June 2007 on the CIA's website following decades of FOIA requests. In 1973, Director James R. Schlesinger commissioned these reports in response to press accounts of CIA involvement in the Watergate scandal. Schlesinger, who became Director of Central Intelligence, DCI, in early 1973, issued the directive in response to growing press scrutiny about the agency's possible role in Watergate, particularly the involvement of former CIA officers E. Howard Hunt and James McCord. This document admits CIA activities that include targeted killings and organized crime ties, specifically assassination plots against foreign leaders. The family jewels documents and subsequent investigations confirmed discussions and preparations for assassination plots, most notably against Cuban leader Fidel Castro, but also involving plans targeting leaders like the Congo's Patrice Lumumba and the Dominican Republic's Rafael Trujillo. They admitted mafia ties. The CIA acknowledged recruiting Robert Mayhew, a former FBI agent and aide to Howard Hughes, as an intermediary to approach mafia figures. The mobsters, who supposedly sought revenge for lost gambling revenue in Cuba, were tasked with delivering 6 potent poison capsules intended to kill Castro. The poison was designed to act within 3 days and leave no trace, making the death appear natural. The plots were unsuccessful, but the agency's collaboration with organized crime was confirmed. They performed illegal domestic surveillance and wiretapping. Domestic surveillance was performed on journalists, college students, and American citizens that they could allege had foreign influence or acquaintances. This surveillance was primarily conducted under Operation Chaos from 1967 to 1974. The operation illegally spied on American citizens, focusing on anti-war groups and dissidents. By its termination, Operation Chaos had compiled approximately 7,200 individual files on U.S. citizens and created a computerized index containing the names of over 300,000 Americans and organizations. They were also wiretapping journalists. The CIA confirmed the physical surveillance and bugging of U.S. journalists as part of its inappropriate activities. One specific case mentioned in the documents involved the physical surveillance of Michael Gettler, then a reporter at the Washington Post. There was significant mail interception as well. So the Jewels intercepted both incoming and outgoing Russian mail, as well as any other mail they selected at Kennedy Airport in New York City. This program was codenamed HT Lingual. It was further extended to mail associated with a watch list of individuals and organizations, including U.S. citizens. Psychological experiments and policy analysis included mind control experiments, drug use, and psychological abuse. You already know I'm going to say it. Project MKUltra, which was established in 1953, was the CIA's illegal program to develop methods for human behavior control. Declassified documents confirm that the agency experimented extensively with high doses of LSD and other psychoactive drugs on unwitting human subjects in the US and Canada, particularly in institutional settings like hospitals and universities. Other documented techniques included hypnosis, isolation, electroshock, and sensory deprivation. The scale of the program is hidden because the director of Central Intelligence, Richard Helms, sensing investigations were coming, ordered the destruction of most of the records in 1973. Of course, I've done two episodes actually on MK Ultra. I did one kind of when I first started the podcast, and I did a more recent one in September of 2024 if you want to go back and listen to that. They performed domestic research on university students. An operation called Restless Youth, likely done under the umbrella of Operation Chaos, examined the root causes of student radicalism in the 1960s. In 1975, President Gerald Ford and Vice President Nelson A. Rockefeller created a presidential commission in response to a 1974 New York Times piece alleging the CIA had conducted illegal domestic activities against American citizens. The U.S. President's Commission on CIA Activities within the United States, more popularly known as the Rockefeller Commission, gave a summary of the paper, noting its conclusion that the motivation for student unrest arose from social and political alienation at home and was not due to a foreign-backed communist conspiracy, contrary to the initial premise of Operation Chaos. The Jewels stalked black people as well. Another domestic surveillance program under Operation Chaos called Project Resistance included the targeting of black radicalism in the Caribbean and advocates for black power in the United States as specific categories of interest. The CIA claimed it was focusing on the potential for foreign links, although the investigation repeatedly found no foreign ties. There were countless security violations and infiltrations. Infiltrations of foreign embassies included them breaking into the French embassy in Washington, D.C. to steal documents as part of a counterintelligence operation. The CIA also conducted other operations in this infiltration involving warrantless entry into the homes and offices of foreign employees and defectors. This is listed in 18 specific issues of legal concern detailed by DCI William Colby. CIA developed covert businesses with civilian roles. The CIA's documented federal violations involved the use of its proprietary airline Air America and the placement of personnel into other government roles to support the covert operations in the airline. For those who don't know, Air America was a covert U.S. government-owned airline operated entirely by the CIA. It was presented as a private company to maintain plausible deniability for its secret operations, which included providing logistical support to U.S. allies during the Cold War and Vietnam War. The airline workers appeared to the public as civilians, however, they were all CIA agents. They performed covert internal infiltrations of the FBI and other government roles. CIA agents were used in covert operations, becoming employees working for other government officials. One agent was employed as a secretary to Mr. Peter Peterson when he served as Secretary of Commerce. The admission details indicate that his agent even made a trip to Moscow with Mr. Peterson. The jewels contain numerous admissions of unauthorized use of agency personnel and resources in covert political roles and in other government agencies. They obtained extensive electric domestic surveillance data through AT&T. Declassified records confirm that the CIA infiltrated the AT&T company to obtain access to domestic communications. They utilized various methods of electronic surveillance, including obtaining records of conversations involving the US and China. This practice was deemed illegal or improper when it involved U.S. citizens without proper warrant procedures. Okay, I know that was a lot, but it was really necessary because it shows that the CIA is capable of using its agents as actors for numerous roles. Historically, the CIA has confirmed companies that did conduct business operations and even generated real revenue and gave all that back to the CIA for secret operations. Today, these companies are commonly referred to as shell companies, and it's almost impossible to determine how much money they generate for covert operations. Without having to account for that funding, the CIA can essentially get away with anything if Congress can't physically trace the money back to them, especially if that funding is used to pay non-official individuals to say or do something in front of a camera that will further their goal. This leads us to the story of Nayira, a 14-year-old girl who may have been the trigger that started the Gulf War. In October 1990, a girl who identified herself only as Nayira stood in front of a congressional committee and gave a gut-wrenching testimony about Iraqi soldiers who, she says, she witnessed throwing newborn babies out of their incubators in a Kuwaiti hospital, leaving them to die on the floor. The eyewitness testimony she provided was repeated by President George H.W. Bush multiple times to the public, receiving widespread publicity. A tape of the testimony was also widely distributed. Of course, any normal American would have been outraged at the thought of terrorists killing hundreds of innocent, fragile babies. Like, that thought is awful, and it really gets people worked up. The sudden outpouring of support to go to war against Iraq was the extra push the president needed, which ultimately led to the beginning of the Gulf War. However, the whole testimony was discovered to be a lie. Nayira claimed she witnessed 312 babies being thrown out of their incubators, but the fact is that Kuwait did not even have 312 incubators. It was actually confirmed by multiple human rights groups and Kuwaiti hospitals that the entire country had only an estimated 200 incubators, and only 90 of those were in the hospital that Nayira described. It was also later revealed that a prominent public relations firm hired by the Kuwaiti government through a front group called Citizens for a Free Kuwait arranged for Nayira's testimony to take place. They coached her and other supposed eyewitnesses on the Iraq atrocities and were responsible for the distribution of the taped testimony. Furthermore, her father, the ambassador to the United States and head of Kuwait's ruling family, was present throughout her entire testimony. The Gulf War served multiple purposes for the U.S. One crucial thing to note is the demonstration of the New World Order. President George H.W. Bush bragged that the coalition's success marked the beginning of a New World Order which demonstrated international cooperation backed by American leadership. The war also served as a highly public, successful battle testing for advanced military technology, often referred to as a revolution in military affairs. This included precision guided munitions, smart bombs, stealth technology like the F-117 Nighthawk, and the Global Positioning System, GPS, for navigation in the featureless desert. The war secured oil access as well. Of course, we love to go to war over oil. The primary motivation for intervention was to prevent Iraqi control over Kuwait's oil reserves, which would have gained Saddam Hussein control of a significant percentage of the world's oil supply. There were also significant financial contributions. Saudi Arabia, Kuwait, Japan, and Germany supplied much of the finances and many resources to cover direct costs for the United States, especially funding high-tech applications like GPS and infrared night vision significantly helped the United States civilian economy. There were also many consequences of this war. Permanent military presence is one significant consequence. The U.S. established the persistent military presence in the region, particularly in Saudi Arabia and other Gulf states. It was also the pathway to the Iraq War in 2003, especially after 9/11, which is an episode in and of itself, and you can go back and check out my previous episodes on that. The need to contain Saddam Hussein led to constant friction, UN inspections, sanctions, and bombings. Not all crisis actors are part of secret government schemes that lead to catastrophic long-term wars, though. Some are locals and affect your own communities. The next part is much more recent and hits closer to home. In 2018, New Orleans experienced a major scandal involving Entergy Electric Company. This is significant because it has fundamentally compromised the democratic process and eroded the public trust in the city's utility regulator, the New Orleans City Council. Entergy New Orleans, or ENO, is a company that acts as the electric and gas utility for New Orleans. They have a utility monopoly, meaning residents and businesses can only get their power from Entergy. It is a Fortune 500 company that owns and operates power plants with approximately 30,000 megawatts of electric generating capacity, making it the second largest nuclear generator in the United States. The company has over 3 million customers in Arkansas, Louisiana, Mississippi, and Texas. Since they are the only option, the New Orleans City Council acts as a referee between Entergy and the customers. They oversee plans, rates, and projects to ensure they are fair to customers and hold hearings for the public to attend. The purpose of the public hearings is to gauge genuine community support for the plant. The city of New Orleans is in a particularly vulnerable spot. It sits low and is surrounded by water, making it vulnerable to powerful hurricanes like Katrina, although, again, a whole nother episode in itself, which could result in potentially dangerous power outages. Entergy proposed a $210 million natural gas power plant known as the New Orleans Power Station, or NOPS. They claim that it would have black start capability, meaning if the power went completely dark, it would become active and immediately provide electricity to critical facilities. It also helps that the power plant would bring in significant profit, but who cares about money when you're trying to save a city, right? The local community strongly opposed this power plant. They had many concerns, as a local community would have. It was costly, and some of that money could have been better allocated for critical needs. It would also significantly increase local pollution in predominantly black and lower income areas in New Orleans East, where it was located. And there were cheaper, cleaner alternatives like solar power and grid updates that residents thought would be a better option. The city council held public meetings to hear what residents thought before voting. However, this is when things got shady. In October 2017 and February 2018, dozens of people showed up to the meetings wearing matching orange t shirts that said, "Clean energy, good jobs, reliable power." They spoke passionately in favor of the new plant. From the outside, they appeared to be this massive organized grassroots movement of concerned citizens. This was far from reality. Entergy New Orleans hired the Hawthorne Group, a powerful public relations firm. The Hawthorne Group, in turn, secretly hired a separate company called Crowds on Demand. Crowds on Demand, which is exactly what it sounds like, recruited people, including local actors, looking for quick cash, and paid them between $60 and $200 just to show up, wear the orange shirts, clap on cue, and sometimes even read scripted speeches supporting the power plant. For a speaking role, they were required to audition. Although Entergy initially denied knowledge of the scheme, an independent investigation revealed that Entergy executives were aware of the deception. The city council ultimately fined Entergy $5 million for its deception. However, the damage had already been done. The first major hurricane that hit after the plant came online in 2020 was a real test of whether the whole scheme was even worth it. Some could argue indeed it was helpful, as it was in fact the first local plant to bring power to New Orleans after a major delay. However, it did not utilize its black start capability to get the city online when the grid was completely dark. It only became active after a transmission line from outside the city was fixed, meaning it did not provide the self sufficiency it was marketed to deliver. Additionally, the power restart had nothing to do with the power plant itself, which is what Entergy attempted to lead people to believe would be the case. The long term consequences and concerns associated with the NOPS power plant included elevated health risks from air pollution. The operation of the power plant, like the NOPS, contributes to the emission of pollutants like nitrogen oxides, sulfur dioxide, and fine particle matter. The area between Baton Rouge and New Orleans is known as Cancer Alley. It is suffering from extremely high rates of industrial air pollution and associated health harms, making any new emissions a significant concern. There has been an increase in cancer, respiratory illness like chronic asthma and bronchitis, and cardiovascular problems in the surrounding communities. Now that we've established the historical evidence, the CIA capability, the government global setup, and the local hiring of actors for a wide range of uses, big and small, when it comes to using people as actors to manipulate the public narrative, let's talk the conspiracies. The claim is that government agencies or other powerful groups hire and pay actors, crisis actors, to pretend to be victims, witnesses, or grieving relatives. This manipulation is carried out to elicit a desired public and political reaction. The main event is staged, a narrative is conspired, and actors are employed. The events are staged to advance political objectives like stricter gun control, justified increased government surveillance, or build public support for military action. The narrative is built to appeal to the public. So each element has to be plausible for the official story, deniable for the government, and capable of being so ridiculous that if you believe it happened any other way than what is told, you can be called a conspiracy theorist and dismissed. Welcome to the club. As for the actors, there are many similarities between them in devastating events. The CIA, which also works with Hollywood, has admitted to the use of makeup, props, contraptions, prosthetics, and many other theatrical setups to support covert operations. One of the most famous examples of the CIA's full capability is the 1980 Operation Argo, which was pulled off by Tony Mendez, the former chief of disguise in the CIA. If you haven't seen the movie, essentially, the CIA used Hollywood theatrics to produce a cover story that the 6 Americans trapped in Iran would pass as a Canadian film crew scouting locations for a fictional science fiction movie. The CIA established a fake movie production company called Studio 6 Productions, with offices actually set up on an old Columbia studio lot. They created an entire film, complete with artwork, job descriptions, and trade advertisements for validation. The CIA contracted with acclaimed makeup artist John Chambers, famous for his work on Planet of the Apes, to help prepare the disguises and face masks used in the operation. And the 6 Americans, who were considered straight laced diplomats, were given extensive rehearsal on their cover stories and new Hollywood chic identities. This included wardrobes like silk skirts and gold chains, and they practiced their new identities down to every little detail. The operation culminated with Mendez successfully escorting his production crew out of Iran undetected. So they can use this deception for good. They saved 6 American lives using this. So let's get into the history and location of where the CIA does most of its secret work. The U-2 reconnaissance aircraft program during the height of the Cold War originated in Utah. In the mid 1950s, the CIA needed a secure remote location to train pilots to test their revolutionary high altitude U-2 spy plane, a project known internally as Project Aquatone. While the primary testing was conducted in Nevada at the location that would become known as Area 51, the immense secrecy of the project required a credible cover story to explain the activity and construction of the remote bases. The CIA and the US government released a carefully crafted narrative to news medias in Utah and Nevada, linking the mysterious new airfield to the Atomic Energy Commission, AEC, and other conventional defense activities in the West. This PR measure was essential to ensure the clandestine nature of the spy plane program remained hidden from the Soviet Union, making Utah an unwitting participant in one of the most vital intelligence operations of the era. Now, Utah is a modern data hub. Utah's most prominent connection to the U.S. intelligence community, though primarily linked to the NSA rather than the CIA, is the Utah Data Center, the UDC, located at Camp Williams near Bluffdale. This enormous $1.5 billion facility is one of the Pentagon's biggest construction projects in the U.S. and serves as a crucial data storage and processing hub for the entire intelligence community. Even though its precise mission remains classified, it is designed to store and process a massive volume of digital data, potentially measured in exabytes, billions of gigabytes, supporting the Comprehensive National Cybersecurity Initiative, CNCI, for all agencies, including the CIA. The facility has become a symbol of the U.S. government's expanded surveillance capabilities, managing the vast amounts of communication and digital information collected for intelligence analysis and evaluation. Utah also serves as a regional recruiting advantage. Intelligence agencies, including the CIA, have a long history of viewing Utah and its citizens as a valuable source for recruitment. This is largely due to the high number of individuals, particularly members of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, LDS Church, or Mormons, who gain fluency in foreign languages and cultural familiarity through the church's global missionary program. This unique linguistic and cultural pool provides a recurring qualified talent pipeline for intelligence operations requiring specialized overseas skills. Now, let's put some conspiracies together. And before we talk about this, just know I am not accusing anyone of anything. I am just saying that these are the conspiracies. They might be true, they might be not true. You make your own decisions. This is just what was found when we looked into the conspiracies. You come up with your own decision. We're going to start with Sandy Hook. It is alleged that the massacre, which resulted in the deaths of 20 children and 6 staff members, was completely false and orchestrated by the government. Grieving parents were accused of being paid performers who faked their children's death for the camera. The narrative originated with suggestions that the government may have hired a real world company, one that uses actors for emergency drills, to help stage the event. One of the main individuals targeted was Robbie Parker, whose daughter Emily was one of the victims. Alex Jones went through a major scandal after accusing Parker and other parents of being paid actors. However, there is actually a lot of information available about Robbie Parker. So, Robbie and his wife Alyssa met in middle school in Ogden, Utah, and they got married in 2003. He attended Weber State College and earned his bachelor's degree, and the state of Oregon to earn his master's degree. He had a medical career focused on child health and safety, working as a physician's assistant in the neonatal intensive care unit at Danbury Hospital up to December 2012. Robbie and Alyssa say they struggled to get pregnant at first, requiring fertility treatment, but on May 12, 2006, their first daughter, Emily, was born. When Emily was almost 3, the family moved to Oregon and then to New Mexico. After New Mexico, they moved to Newtown, Connecticut for Robbie's job. Just 8 months after moving to Newtown, the Sandy Hook massacre happened. On December 22nd, 2012, just a few days before Christmas, the family held Emily's funeral service in Ogden, Utah, at the Rock Cliff Latter-day Saints Stake Center. The residents of Ogden knew that Emily's favorite color was pink, so along the funeral procession route were pink ribbons, angels, and people were wearing pink, all the way to Evergreen Memorial Park. James Parker, Emily's uncle, told the press that the loss had been tough on Alyssa, who had just buried her father a few months earlier after he was killed in a freak bicycle accident. Douglas G. Cottle, Alyssa Parker's father, passed away on September 29, 2012, at the age of 62. He was known for his adventurous spirit and competitiveness. He was born and raised in Ogden, Utah, and later traveled the United States with his wife while he went through dental school and served in the Navy. He and Alyssa enjoyed running marathons together, even qualifying for the Boston Marathon, which he competed in only months before his death. In September, he had the tragic bicycle accident where he suffered severe brain trauma. Nearing the end of his recovery, sadly, he experienced a fall that caused a second fatal brain injury. Robbie Parker's name recently resurfaced in the media following the assassination of Charlie Kirk. Many people believed that a man named Skylar Baird was Robbie Parker. This led to a whole new slew of conspiracy theories. One narrative claimed that Skylar Baird was also a crisis actor, even if he wasn't actually Robbie Parker. Skylar Baird made several public appearances for interviews as a key eyewitness during the Charlie Kirk shooting. He says he had only been like 10 to 15 feet away from Charlie and witnessed him get shot. He says that he is one of the people who ducked down into a moat area, helping others get around the barriers that were blocking the crowd. Skylar also stated that George Zinn came to him claiming that he had just shot Charlie Kirk, and Skylar is the one who walked him to the police. Convenient, right? One more really interesting thing is that Skylar was also able to go to Charlie Kirk's memorial and had floor-level seats in the midst of all those public figures. Interesting. Skylar Baird, like Robbie Parker, also has a lot of public information about him. He grew up in Utah, graduating from Jordan High in Sandy, Utah, and later attended Westminster College and LDS Business College. He was also an LDS missionary from 2007 to 2009. He is the founder of Salt of the Earth Ministries. He has an extensive background as a videographer working for Liquidity Services Incorporated. Liquidity Services Incorporated provides an online marketplace for organizations to sell their surplus inventory, return products, and end-of-life assets. And they also offer online auctions along with services for surplus management, including valuation, asset management, and logistics. They operate numerous online marketplaces and platforms that serve major corporations and government agencies that want to manage their surplus assets and create value from them. Skylar is also the founder of Boosted Safe. Boosted Safe is a high-tech, secure, solid steel car safe that locks to your back seat and disguises as a booster seat. It can hold anything from important papers to guns, all locked and sealed within without looking like a safe at all. He's also into fitness. He's often running marathons, which is a weird connection back to Robbie Parker and Robbie's father-in-law who ran the marathons. And one news article even reported that Skylar, a stranger, sacrificed his race to help a woman qualify for the Boston Marathon this year while he was participating in the 2025 Houston Marathon. I mean, he sounds like a super nice guy to me. Skylar Baird seemed to be just in the right place at the right time for the woman in the race, but also at the Charlie Kirk assassination. So let's go back a little bit. He was the guy who helped get George Zinn to a police officer, right? So just this really nice guy who helped somebody qualify for a marathon, also like captured George Zinn and got him to the police because he did a bad thing, right? Like according to Skylar, George Zinn went straight to him saying, quote, he was faking it. He was faking it. He says he told Zinn that he saw the blood. And at that point, Zinn starts saying, quote, I shot him. I shot him, end quote. At that point, Skylar says he escorts Zinn to the police and let the cops know that Zinn is saying he shot him and that he doesn't think it's possible, that he's probably just some crazy guy. It's like weird. It's just like really weird chain of events. Since September 10th, George Zinn has become world famous. However, he seems to have been a character straight out of an old Woody Allen movie for a long time. Here's what we know about him. Born George Hodgson Zinn, the son of a Union Pacific man who worked at the Ogden Yard office in magazine shipping for around 40 years, Zinn grew up Mormon in the LDS Church and was a member of the Salt Lake City, Utah Mormon Church. Zinn was an active member of the Mormon Youth Symphony and Chorus growing up and toured with the group throughout the United States. In 2002, Zinn was quoted in the Desert newspaper proclaiming himself as, quote, Greek Zelig, after it was pointed out that he seems to appear everywhere, especially at momentous events. Zelig is a really weird thing to call yourself. So I looked it up because I was like, that just seems like a weird name to give yourself. The name Zelig comes from the main character of Woody Allen's 1983 mockumentary, Zelig. It's like a fictitious film made to look like a real life documentary. Leonard Zelig is a man with a psychological disorder that causes him to unconsciously mimic the traits and even physical appearances, including skin tones, languages, and cultural identities of the people around him. Essentially, he's a human chameleon. The word Zelig can also be translated to the Greek word zelos, which in Greek mythology is a spirit who personifies fierce dedication, emulation, rivalry, and zeal. George Zinn is someone often described in Utah political circles as a political celebrity and a ubiquitous activist, and is notable for his deep involvement in Republican politics. He has been a regular presence in the Utah Republicans Party since the 1980s. However, although he is politically conservative, he is known for leaning libertarian. Zinn's political interest was sparked in childhood and developed during his time at the University of Utah, where he was mentored by political scientists Dr. J.D. Williams and Dr. Dan Jones. His earliest and most significant political involvement was with former President Ronald Reagan. His record demonstrates high-level participation in the party's biggest events. He was a charter member of the Republican Presidential Task Force for Ronald Reagan. He attended 7 national conventions and 2 presidential inaugurations. He was present at the presidential lying in state for Ronald Reagan, which is when a current or former president dies. Their casket is laid in state in the U.S. Capitol. Zinn's political philosophy centered on combating party division and resisting the status quo, quoting Reagan, quote, status quo, is Latin for the mess we're in, end quote. He served in various capacities within the Utah Republican Party, including in the Utah GOP, serving as a precinct chair, state delegate, county delegate, and a member of the Salt Lake County Central Committee. He was also an alternative national delegate nominee. And in national campaigns, he supported high profile efforts, including the Romney Ryan deployment in Colorado and Las Vegas, as well as the campaign for Ted Cruz's potential bid. Zinn was also featured in a 9/11 documentary produced by the Major Brent Taylor Foundation, where he recounted his experiences during 9/11 attacks. He says that he had been attending the Denver Broncos game on September 10th, 2001, and the morning of September 11th, while he was in the Denver airport waiting to fly home, he saw the news of the attacks. He says he later went to visit Ground Zero twice, actually. Once during the cleanup phase while attending the National Republican Convention in New York. He even left a patriotic message on the memorial wall. He says the second time he went back, the memorial wall had been torn down. In 2002, Zinn is credited as being the reason for the Minnesota state race's Republican nominee Norm Coleman's big win. Sadly, Norm Coleman's political opponent, incumbent Senator Paul Wellstone, tragically died in a plane crash just shortly before the election. So, if Zinn is credited for being the reason for his win, did he sabotage the plane? Interestingly enough, the Deseret newspaper also stated that former Vice President Walter Mondale jumped in to try to save the seat for the Democrats, and they would turn Wellstone's funeral service into a campaign rally, but ultimately, Norm Coleman won anyway. They specifically quoted Jim Jeffords, a major politician, "One man or one woman can make a difference," following up by saying, "Who'd have thought it would be George Zinn?" In 2003, Zinn was documented in Eagle, Colorado, after traveling by Greyhound bus to attend the preliminary hearing in the Colby Bryant essay case. A CBS News outlet even quoted him as saying, quote, "I don't consider Kobe a role model," end quote. However, Zinn went from being a shape-shifting, life-changing traveler to a criminal. In 2013, he was charged with threatening terrorism. In an email to Salt Lake City Marathon organizers, the charge was later reduced to just a misdemeanor. Shortly after the Boston Marathon bombing in 2013, he sent an email asking organizers if they, quote, "needed help placing bombs near the finish line," end quote. In 2019, he participated in the inland port protest. Zinn was one of 5 people arrested during a violent protest over the Utah Inland Port Authority. He was booked for investigation of disorderly conduct and failure to disperse. Arrest reports stated Zinn allegedly pushed protesters who he thought were blocking a public bus. While in custody, he reportedly told multiple nurses and doctors that he committed the act because he was supposed to be paid to do it, though he did not know who the payer was. He is currently being held in the Utah County Jail on a second-degree felony of obstruction of justice. The authorities have stated there is no evidence that he colluded with the shooter. He is also facing 4 counts of the second-degree felony of sexual exploitation of a minor. These charges are being investigated separately after he admitted to FBI agents that he uses his phone to view child sexual abuse material. They found over 20 images of child pornography on his phone, including explicit messages sharing the material. It's just so odd to me that he would immediately confess to shooting Charlie Kirk when he didn't do it. And then once he was captured, he would be like, "Hey, by the way, I also have child porn on my phone." It just feels too convenient. George Zinn has been everywhere, and it doesn't make any sense. So, what do you guys think about this? Do you believe the conspiracy theories that the government or special organizations hire crisis actors to manipulate the public opinion about major events and even like local policies? Because in New Orleans, it was proved that they hired all these people to usher in this electrical plant, an electrical plant that didn't even work when it was supposed to. I'd love to hear what you guys think. But of course, until next time, my friends, stay skeptical, and I will see you all then. Hey friends, The Rabbit Hole is an independent podcast written, hosted, and produced by me, Danny Mercy. Special thanks to Lindsay for research and writing. If you love the podcast, please leave us a 5-star rating and review wherever you're listening. Follow us on social media at rabbit.holepodcast and visit our website at stayskeptical.com for everything else.